Hello. Hi. We are starting today.
Okay, we're recording again.
Yeah. So Trump v. Colorado, the Supreme Court ruling. We decided to actually just read the court ruling papers. It's about 20 pages.
Yeah, the court opinion.
The court opinion. It's actually is 20 pages. If folks haven't taken the time since like school or like ever seen official court documents, Supreme Court documents, they're pretty simple to read. They try to make it concise language.
And they do a pretty good job of referencing what it is, like citing what it is they're referencing when they're talking about previous precedents.
Yeah, and a lot of the court opinions like to put in a bunch of references to old cases. And you can look up all this information. It's all very detailed and documented. But anyway, read the paper and have come to the conclusion that essentially the court did what it was supposed to do. They ruled that the state cannot use Section 3 of the 14th Amendment, which is the
Commonly known as the Insurrection Clause.
Yes. The state can use this clause to bar people from state office.
But not federal office.
But not federal office, because federal office is by the Fed. So like the federal government has control of this, and that's what the state that's what the Supreme Court ruled.
Yeah, and essentially it seemed as though one of the things that they were essentially saying was that this would create a state by state basis on who can and cannot be on the ballot for the presidential election, which might be a bit of a mess. And they had this one part where they were talking about how the president represents all of the citizens, and they had all emphasized, and they were quoting a previous ruling, but then they added in parentheses at the end, emphasis added, where like they were adding the emphasis, like the current court was adding the emphasis on all people are represented by the president,
which I can agree with.
I can, but I also think about it in this hypothetical situation. So say one state just doesn't vote for one of the candidates at all, and that candidate ended up winning. Technically, that state didn't vote for that candidate at all, and yet that candidate is still the person representing that state's interests as president of the United States. Just thought that was interesting. And it made me think a little bit about like the Civil War and like what happened right before the Civil War with the election of Abraham Lincoln.
Okay.
And from as far as I understand it, I mean, it's been a while since I've looked into this, so I think I'll have to double check this and confirm or deny it next episode, but something like several of the southern states that decided to then secede during the Civil War did not vote at all for Abraham Lincoln.
Oh.
Like none of their electors went to Abraham Lincoln. And so they used that as an attempt to justify their separation. But yet we determined, though, that doesn't matter if you didn't vote for them at all, the president still represents all.
Yeah, I don't know much about those times, I suppose.
Yeah, it also makes me think about, you remember when like Trump was first elected and there was a series of like pretty prominent Democrats, and there was that the rallying call of "not my president." And it's like, okay, yeah, sure, he's not your president if you want, but he is your president.
I immediately, when I started seeing that, rolled my eyes.
Yeah, I rolled my eyes a lot too. I was like, oh boy.
And what always surprised me was like how serious some people were about stuff like that. Political view was just.
Yeah, and then a lot of people were using they were relating that political view towards, and I think there was a lot of overlap between that political view and the people who are hardcore against the Electoral College.
Yeah,
and want it to be a straight up democracy. Which, speaking of, I remember I was reading because all right, let's go back to the Supreme Court. Let's get off this tangent.
Yeah, so
back to the Supreme Court thing, like there was the difference was, as far as I understood, there was a difference in how far the opinion goes between the sexes. So the 5 male justices, all are conservative justices, essentially stated that it's not up to the states, which all of the other justices agreed, All the female justices agreed. But then they went on to say, essentially, the Congress must pass legislation that is specific to determining how one would be determined, how one would go about determining whether or not someone is disqualified as an insurrectionist. So they feel like they added ideas or added concepts to this that hasn't been there. And Coney Barrett, the one conservative female Supreme Court justice, essentially said, I don't agree with them adding on that stuff, but I do agree with the original thing that Colorado can't bar Trump from running because of a federal offices have to be barred at the federal level. And the 3 liberal justices, all female, also agreed with that, and then criticized the majority opinion held by the men that where they added all of these extra things. What was the word language they cited at the beginning of their opinion? Something like, if it is not necessary to decide on more than what's being asked, then it is necessary not to decide on more than what is asked.
Correct.
Which is the idea of judicial deference, where essentially the judicial system should only decide at what's being asked, and then anything that isn't being asked but might be related must be left up to the legislature.
Mm-hmm. And I'm glad you mentioned Justice Barrett. In my notes, I specifically stated to just read her paragraph.
Two paragraphs.
It's 2 paragraphs. I'll read her second paragraph. She states, the majority's choice of a different path leaves the remaining justices with a choice of how to respond. In my judgment, this is not the time to amplify disagreement with stridency. The court has settled a politically charged issue in the volatile season of a presidential election. Particularly in this circumstance, writings on the court should turn the national temperature down, not up. For present purposes, our differences are far less important than our unanimity. Unanimity? Unanimity.
Oh God, I'm
all
sorry.
All 9 justices agree. I laughed on that part too. All 9 justices agree on the outcome of this case. This is the message Americans should take home.
So she wants us to turn into a slow cooker.
She just wants us to simmer. Yeah,
turn the temperature down. We're simmering. No boiling over or anything like that.
Yeah. Hold on. And then I'll read the last paragraph, a couple sentences of the last paragraph of the
3 liberal justices.
Yes.
I did think that was really interesting, though. That I don't know, that the dividing line on how far they were going to go was on sex. All the men were like, we're going to say this, and then we're going to say a whole lot more. And then the women were like, no, you don't need to say all that. Yeah. You just need to say the one thing that we're all agreeing with.
Yeah. So I'll go on with the liberal last statements. Section 3 serves an important, though rarely needed, role in our democracy. The American people have the power to vote for and elect candidates for national office, and that is a great and glorious thing. The men who drafted and ratified the 14th Amendment, however, had witnessed an insurrection and rebellion to defend slavery. They wanted to ensure that those who had participated in that insurrection and in possible future insurrections could not return to prominent roles. Today, the majority goes beyond the necessities of this case to limit how Section 3 can bar an oath-breaking insurrectionist from becoming president. Although we agree that Colorado cannot enforce Section 3, we protest the majority's effort to use this case to define the limits of federal enforcement of that provision. Because we would decide only the issue before us, we concur only in judgment. So yeah, the majority added this little tad bit of, I think you just explained it earlier, so just add a little bit of extra rules for Congress to set up.
Yeah, and one of the criticisms that the female liberal justices had, the 3 liberal justices had, was that the court is essentially, the male court justices are essentially saying that Congress must pass laws to determine how and when someone can be barred from office.
Yeah, exactly. So,
but the thing is that they were critical of was that essentially to pass a law like that doesn't require the filibuster. So you just need a simple majority to pass a law like that. But that amendment, the 14th Amendment, requires a supermajority of Congress to remove any disqualifications.
yeah,
Which I thought was interesting because they were essentially saying like, okay, so a slim majority can decide what qualifies as insurrection, but you need a supermajority to to remove this disqualifying thing. And they were essentially critical of that because of the difference in power for qualifying versus disqualifying.
Yeah, I remember that. Which again, I think what's happening right now is that there's, our nation is steadily growing and like changing and culturally changing and politically changing, and we have laws now. Like the Section 3 was created. The 14th Amendment in Section 3 was created after. It was created for the Reconstruction time period after the Civil War.
To prevent southern states that have been recently readmitted to the Union from disenfranchising the recently freed slaves.
Yeah, so like one of the statements in the paper was that this hasn't been an issue before, really, because it hasn't really happened before, like in the federal level. Like this clause was used by several states right after
to ban state officials from returning to their posts.
Yeah, like I actually have some examples. I think it was like some sort of a county sheriff in 1869 and a state judge as well in 1869, which was the year I think that the act was enacted, or the following year.
The following year.
Yeah,
there was the Enforcement Act of 1870, which even I think the court said in their opinion is the only act Congress ever passed relating to the enforcement of Article 14, Section 3. Of Amendment 14, Section 3. Not Article, sorry.
I think the ruling was fair.
I agree with the judgment of the ruling, but I also agree with the female justices in that, like, it should have stopped there. Like, they shouldn't have kept opining about stuff because, like, a majority of the court document is that first opinion where it expounds on all of these other things.
Yeah.
Like, that's probably, 14 of the 20 pages with one page dedicated to Coney Barrett's remarks and then another, 2 or 3 pages, I think 3 or 4 pages maybe, dedicated to the liberal justices.
Yeah. I think, I don't know. I felt like I had a lot more to say before, but right now I just feel like...
Well, I want to talk about something relating to that. 2 things. Well, one was that your use of the word nation in regards to our country.
Yeah.
And 2 was what the liberal justices referred to. They referred to our democracy. And I think, I don't know, me personally, I think both of those are wrong. Like, I don't think we are a nation, and I also don't think we're a democracy. We're a republic, and we're a democratic republic where you make democratic votes for representatives.
Right.
And that's the representative nature is what is the nature of a republic.
Can a republic not be a nation? What do you mean by that?
Well, nations can be republics, but I do not think the United States is a nation. And there was this debate I watched hosted by the Soho Forum. It's like a libertarian debate platform kind of thing. And this one guy was arguing that, and I agreed with his argument. It was an argument of is nationalism a force for good and whatnot? And
it can be. It can be bad.
It can be, and it's most often bad.
Yeah.
The point he was making was that the extreme end of nationalism is imperialism.
Yeah.
That is the logical conclusion of nationalism. Yeah. And how what is a nation versus what is a state. And in America, we have a problem with understanding the difference between a nation and a state. In Europe, they don't really have this problem. Yeah. There are nation states, and then there are states, and then there are countries. So we have a federalized states. Each state has its own, is like its own country.
Yeah.
but we're federalized in a union of common defense and common cooperation and common protections that the federal government has a limited role in playing.
Yeah.
But each state in and of itself is not a nation, because a nation is based on ethnic group and common ethnicity. Think of things like France, Germany, England,
Japan.
Spain, Japan, China. Those are nations because they are a state for that nationality. This whole concept is how we created Israel. It is a state for the Jews because the Jews didn't have a state. It's the rationale behind like people trying to uprise in, eastern Syria, western Iraq, southern Turkey, the Kurdish. The Kurdistan is they're an ethnic group or a nation without a state.
Yeah.
And so that's where I object to calling the United States a nation, because we're not a nation, and each individual state in and of itself is not a nation, because there isn't a particular ethnic group that this state is meant to be for.
Yeah, I think there is. It's anyone.
That's
the outcast of the world come to America.
Yeah, we're the outcasts of the world. We're not a nation. We are a collection of peoples from nations that work together to form states. But we are not a nation state. And none of our states are nation states. The closest we ever came to having a nation state in the Union of the United States was in the 1800s, when a bunch of American Indians got together and American Indian tribes got together and tried to petition Congress to allowing them to form a Indian American nation state within the United States.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously that didn't go anywhere, and Congress was like, we're not going to bother with that. But yeah, I think essentially the United States is not a democracy, first thing first. We are a democratic republic. We vote democratically for representatives to represent our interests in the republic body.
Yeah.
And we're not a nation. We are a country that is made up out of a collection of states, but none of it is nation.
I feel like the Terry and Jerry from Midland, Ohio would disagree with you. We are the nation of America.
Yeah, I know. But the thing is it's because a lot of people conflate the concept of what a nation is with what a country is.
Yeah.
At least a lot of people in America.
Well, because we don't really need to think about that.
Yeah, and which is not good for us, because then we talk about this stuff with countries like Russia, which is a nation state comprised. But the Federative Republic of Russia is in and of itself a bit of a nation state, because it has certain sub-nations and sub-states within it. And Ukraine is a nation state. It's a state for the Ukrainians. That's the whole reason why the Ukrainians are fighting so hard, because they're like, we're an independent, different state.
It's the Russian Federation.
The Russian Democratic Federative Republic, yeah.
Because it has a bunch of other nations in it.
Yes, but there is a Russian nation as part of it.
Yeah, that's like the Moscow central area.
The central area, and among it, there's I can't remember all of the different republics, but the Chechen state is a nation state of Chechens. That's in like the Caucasus area.
Where's Habib from?
Habib.
Yeah, Dagestan. That's another republic in Russia.
Again, in the same general area in the Caucasus.
Yeah.
Or north of the Caucasus.
I know the very, very polar people have their own nation state as well.
Yeah, there's a Republic of Yakutsk or something like that.
Yeah, and
again, those are independent nations. Not independent. Those are federalized nations within the general federalized system of Russia. And part of that was because the Russians were insecure during the empire building phase and just kept pushing and pushing and pushing and pushing.
Till they hit the ocean.
Till they hit the ocean. Because, they didn't have any good... They went to the Ural Mountains, and then they were like, okay, that's a good defense. And they stayed there for a while. And then they were like, let's keep going. And then got to the ocean.
Yeah. Tangent. For a little while, Russia, after World War II, was like, what do we do with all the Jews? So they made a Jewish state. There was a slight Jewish state. Where do you think it was in Russia?
Probably Siberia.
It was close to the ocean. right near like Japan.
Oh, so it was over in the by like Vladivostok.
Yeah, but like right before that peninsula. But they made it this like little tiny area designated to like welcome Jews in. And there was actually several thousand, I think, over 6,000 Jews.
So it was essentially a Jewish socialist republic within the Soviet Socialist Republics.
Yeah.
Whilst also the core, but it was also really far off in the east where they can't really bother with Moscow because Moscow at the time was very, the Jewish capitalists are ruining the world.
Well, they hated all religions also, so.
Yeah. But they were also pretty anti-Semitic.
Which was weird for me learning in the past couple of years of like how entrenched anti-Semitism was in like Eastern Europe, even Western Europe. It was just all over Europe for some fucking reason.
Well, I mean, I think from what I understand, that all comes from this.
And
like,
this is a history of hundreds of years.
Oh yeah, no, if not thousands.
Yeah.
Like so, I think it was like for the course of like 1,600 years, give or take, like every year there would be a pogrom against Jews where thousands, if not hundreds, like tens of thousands of Jews would be murdered. Like burned at the stake. There was one case in like I think somewhere between the 14th and 17th centuries in Germany. There's a city in Germany where they killed like 2,000 Jews in a night, just threw them into a pile on fire.
Why?
Because as far as I understand it, it's because of a specific passage within the New Testament of the Bible that is both respected among the Orthodox and the non-Orthodox denominations of Christianity, where it essentially says what the Jews did to Jesus shall be reaped on the Jews and all of their descendants for eternity. So it's essentially saying
stupid.
The Jews killed Jesus and the Jews are to blame for Jesus, and so it's the Jews' fault and it's even their Jews' children's fault and all the Jews going for eternity. And that's why there was a history of all of these pogroms happening where Jews are being targeted, Jews are being killed and kicked out of their places and forced to move across Central Europe, Western Europe, Eastern Europe.
Yep. Yeah.
Like I had this coworker of mine whose family was Jewish, and she told me that they think that her family was kicked out of. Her family came from Central Eastern Europe, but she thinks that the family was originally from the Iberian Peninsula and were kicked out of the Iberian Peninsula during the Reconquista of the Iberian Peninsula because the Catholics were very anti-Jew at that time. And then they moved to Central Europe where they could get away from that violence. And then, you had all of this happening, and that's what pushed for the Zionist movement to reestablish a Jewish homeland in Israel, or in what was then called Palestine.
Yeah.
And this whole concept came from the fact that the Jews were being horrifically persecuted
all over the world
for centuries, all over the world.
Which I mean, like learning about, it's like, what? Why? Like, what the fuck?
They're an easy scapegoat. That's why. Because they're viewed as an other. They're very distinguishably an other from the core group you have.
Yeah.
And because of that, it's easy to blame things on them.
Yeah.
Because they're so distinguishable and different from the core population. Like the Jews of France were Jewish compared to the Catholics of France. Same with Germany, same with everywhere they went. They were very distinct and different.
Yeah.
Which made it easy for them to be targeted and blamed for whatever shit was going on at that time. But yeah, so this push of like, oh hey, we keep killing the Jews and making them move, pushed for the concept and idea of the Jews having a homeland of their own where they could be secure. And then, and World War I happened, and that's, the Ottomans essentially held Israel and Palestine at that time, and the British made promises to the Palestinians, to the Jordanians, to the Saudi Arabians, to all of these different ethnic tribal groups among that comprised the Middle East and the Ottoman Empire, and they made all these promises to them. We'll give you your independence. We'll give you your independence if you revolt against the Ottomans, because they wanted them to fight the Ottomans because the Ottomans were in the Central Powers. They also made that same promise to the Zionist Jews of Palestine, And then at the end of World War One, the British didn't really do any of that. They sort of set up puppet governments all over this area.
Yeah, for themselves. They colonized it themselves.
They did. But, I mean, but they set up a system by which they then became independent states today. But again, this is one of those situations where the countries in the Middle East were attempted to be drawn on the idea of the nation-state borders, like Iraq for Iraqis, but it's such a hodgepodge of different ethnic groups all over there that I don't think ever worked. And then you saw what happened with Palestine, where the British had the Mandate of Palestine, which was a British protectorate, a colonial government in charge. And then after World War II, that collapsed into the 1947, 1948, sometime around then. Palestinian and Israeli war, and then Israel essentially Israel was proclaimed as an independent state by the Israelis or by the Jews there, and then the Palestinian forces were at war with them before that, and then once the Israelis proclaimed their own independent statehood, all of the surrounding states went to war with them. Jordan, Lebanon, Syria, Egypt, and Iraq, I think. Maybe not Iraq, but all of these surrounding Arab states just declared war on the newly proclaimed state of Israel,
and
trying to shut it down. And they lost. And then, 20 years, and then 20 years went by, and they all declared war on Israel again, and then they lost. And so Israel took control of Gaza, the West Bank, during this 67 war, and the Golan Heights from Syria. And I think during this war, they also took control of the Sinai Peninsula.
Yeah.
And then, maybe a decade or two later, they gave it back to Egypt, and we're essentially dealing with the borders that Israel has had since then. I mean, Israel occupied Gaza up until 2004, 2005?
I think so.
And then they withdrew, and they forcibly removed Israeli settlers in Gaza.
Yeah.
It's just, it's one of those things where it's a fucking mess over there.
Yeah, I want to apologize for my comment about saying they lost.
I mean, they did.
They did, but I don't know. I said it too enthusiastically.
Well, I said it in a way where I was like, I'm impressed that they lost, because
they should have won.
It was like 6 states against 1. Granted, the Israeli state had the backing of the financial backing of the U.S. and Britain, which were the 2 major powers at the end of World War II.
They're still major powers.
Britain, not so much. They're a strong economy, but outside of that, they're not really that powerful. Oh. They've been downgraded, according to some analysts, to a second-rate or third-rate military power.
I saw that. Yeah. And a lot of the Brits were pissed.
Yeah, well, hey, guys, get your shit together.
Okay. I feel like this is a good transition to a topic that I had, and then we can transition back to the U.S. The Macron, French president.
With him talking about sending NATO troops to Ukraine?
Sending French troops.
Which are NATO troops.
Yeah. He says if Russian forces are approaching Kiev or Odessa, that he is open to sending his troops on the ground over there. And then it was a big story, and then
all of the other NATO allies were like, "No, we're not doing that."
No, and then everyone's talking to him about it, and then I think a day or two later he's like, "Yeah, I meant that shit."
Yeah, he's trying to play the counteractive strongman to Putin right now. Yeah. Also, I think he's trying to, reassert French power projection. Because I know the French were really pissed off at the United States and Australia, because we signed AUKUS, which was Australia, UK, and US defense pact, where we would agree to share our nuclear submarine building technology with Australia and the UK, and we would help the Australians build nuclear submarines to supplement their fleet. We did that when the Australians already had a deal with the French to do exactly the same thing. And so the Australians reneged on that deal with the French, pissing the French off because they went with us instead.
we're like fellow Brits and Americans. And the UK, Australia, and US have like a special bond.
Yeah, I don't like that.
You don't?
I don't like that we have that special bond. I mean, I understand how it exists. We all have as the dominant languages English, given the different dialects, but still English is the common language.
Similar cultures as well.
Similar cultures as well. Again, because it was a very Anglo-American culture that evolved from both the Revolution and World War II. Because again, like Australia, I think technically speaking, still the head of state for Australia is the monarchy of Britain, and same with Canada as well.
Yeah.
I think they're called the Dominion.
Yeah, because they still host their what's it called? The games, the special games. What are they called? The UK games.
I have no idea.
We're like all of its former colonies, like
all compete in like a.
It's
series.
like a little.
It's like what the U.S. World Series is, but like instead of but our own little world of the states, they have their own little world of the British Dominion.
Yeah,
and the former British Empire.
Yeah. It still goes on.
Yeah, I'm sure it does. But yeah, I think that I mean, I'm interested to see what would possibly happen. I also was hearing about reports
of the Commonwealth Games.
The Commonwealth Games, that's what they're called. Well, yeah, the British Commonwealth is the Great Britain and its collection of dominions.
Yeah.
Like New Zealand, Australia.
Yeah, they participate in the Commonwealth Games.
Yeah. About the French stuff, though.
Oh yeah.
And speaking on like France and Ukraine, so essentially Macron saying if the Russian troops are threatening to invade or assault either Odessa or Kyiv, Macron essentially said he would send troops in to help shore up the defenses.
Yeah.
I don't think that's a good idea.
I don't either.
Not only for the fact of that risks a direct involvement of NATO forces fighting Russians. That's going to be not very popular among the French, I would imagine. And the French really do like to protest.
There's an interesting group in France that
the Yellow Jackets.
No, I don't know what they're about, but
the Yellow Jackets are like it's like a common symbol of protest. They put on the yellow hazard jackets.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, because they're required to have that in their car. No, I'm talking about a political group who want to reclaim France's glory.
Like the Le Pen.
Yeah, but I'm just more so talking about just Joe Schmoes in France that feel that they want,
bring back the Bonapartes.
Yeah, exactly. I think it's been amplified because recently there's been a lot of talk between France and its former African colonies, because there's been a lot of pushback from these former African colonies in the past couple of years from French interference. France has maintained an economic bloc within its former French African colonies.
Yeah, where they have direct control over the valuation of those African countries' currencies.
Yeah,
it's tied directly to the franc, and I think at one point I want to say it was somewhere between the 80s and 90s, but a while ago. But it was after these former colonies gained their so-and-so independence, where they essentially slashed the valuation of the currency over there by half. Because the French central bank had control over the valuation and devaluation of African currencies in those former colonies.
Yeah, so recently there's been a lot of pushback by countries in the Sahel, right? Last year we heard all about that, coups and stuff. Actually, I haven't looked into what's been going on there recently.
It's been a while. I know there's, because Senegal is part of that area, Cameroon
and God damn it, what's the Mali?
And Mali.
And Niger. They formed a union basically, because I think when Mali or Senegal, when Niger, I think was the last one to have a coup. When Niger did that,
then the other group or the other
EU
countries
and France and Nigeria were like, you guys can't keep fucking up the status quo. And then the bloc was like, yeah, we'll form a union, and if you guys do anything
attack
to Niger,
if you
we'll
try
all
to
declare war on
yeah,
you.
we'll go to Niger's defense. And it was like, I think there was that idea of like possible intervention in Niger from Nigeria.
Yeah.
And that bloc formed and prevented that sort of direct hardcore military intervention.
Yeah, I mean, and the Nigerian thing was because Western influence was like, hey, we need
Yeah, I mean,
Nigeria, you guys are like our African like associates.
It was a former British colony, so it didn't have direct ties to the French colonial system.
Yeah,
and also it's a major oil producer and exporter, and so there was the dollar push from the European and American countries, not nations. I almost called America a nation there after what we were talking about before.
Yeah, I feel like for our purposes,
I'm going to try my best to not refer to America as a nation because I do not think it is one.
I will call it a nation because I think it is one.
We are not a nation. We're a collection of states. Okay, so we talked about a lot of domestic stuff. We talked about things at the federal level here. We talked about things at the international level. And let's bring it back to Chicago.
Yep.
Bring Chicago home. How do you feel about it?
Yeah, so I was doing some reading about it. So it's a ballot measure. There was some like legal issues recently.
Yeah, so as far as I'm aware, it's a ballot measure to increase the transfer tax on homes sold for over $1 million, whilst decreasing the transfer tax on homes sold for under $1 million. And it was going to be on the ballot, and then it was taken off the ballot, like they weren't going to count it because of a circuit court decision. And then just recently this week, or last week on Wednesday,
this past Wednesday.
What was that? The 6th, 7th, and 6th, the 5th?
Anyway, I don't know the date.
It was the 6th. On the 6th, an appellate court overturned the circuit court decision allowing for the ballot to be counted. And then it's being appealed to the Supreme Court. So we'll see what the Supreme Court says. But people should go out and vote whatever they choose to vote for it. And the idea is to raise. They think it'll raise more revenue. I think they estimated something like $100 million more that they would then put towards resources for affordable housing projects and handling the migrant crisis going on with people coming here and not having places to stay.
Which I have my own ideas about how to deal with migrant crisis, because we have dealt with them before. Chicago has gone through this before
several times. Irish, the the blacks from the South migrating up during the Great Migration.
Yeah.
One thing I'm wondering about it, all right, so it doesn't affect the people who are selling homes. It affects the people who are buying homes, because this transfer tax is paid by the people buying and not by the people selling, unless the person selling is selling to a tax-exempt organization.
So currently, real estate transfers in Chicago are taxed at a rate of $3.75 for each $500 of the purchase price.
$3.75 for every. You said $3.75 for 500.
Oh yeah, $3.75 for each $500 of the purchase price.
And that's flat, right, across all of them, or is that just the ones underneath?
I think that's just it.
The flat rate across all.
Yeah.
And essentially, what they want to do is they want to raise that number on buildings that are valued at over $1 million.
Yeah.
But lower that number on buildings that are valued under $1 million. Now, there's
so this is the structure. It would cut the tax to $3 for every $500 of the transfer price, as long as the property is below $1 million. This represents a reduction of 20%. And then the increased rate would be applied to property values between $1 million and $1.5 million, with those funds taxed at a rate of $10 for every $500 in purchase price. So it's a fucking lot.
That's a huge increase. That's like a 200% increase.
Over 233%.
233% increase.
Additionally, for any value over $1.5 million, the transfer tax would be boosted to $15 for every $500 in value.
Jesus
An
Christ.
increase of 400%.
All right. So, I mean, there's two things to talk about with this. I'm going to talk about my first concern. Like, I wonder if this will make the city lose revenue by lowering the amount of revenue generated on houses sold for under $1 million, but disincentivizing and therefore decreasing the actual transfers of homes over $1 million, especially homes over 1.5 million, with a $15 to $500 rate. That's insane.
So this is what's going to happen.
At least that was my concern, and then I know you have your own concern regarding the like long-term increase in valuation of properties and how this I don't think is tied to inflation in any regard.
Yeah, but since you're just talking about it, some new thing came up to me. People are gonna come together and just devalue homes so they can do this little scheme.
Oh yeah, kind of like with what happened with what's his fucking face, the bowling ball. I don't like him, so I call him the bowling ball. The bowling ball with the whole like disconnecting toilets in one of his homes so he could avoid paying property taxes.
Yeah.
And then he was like, "No, I didn't do anything wrong," but and then he paid the actual money, and then they're like, "Isn't?" I remember seeing the debate, and they're like, "Isn't that an admission of guilt if you're paying the tax you were avoiding?"
Yeah.
And he was like, "Oh no, I don't see how it is." Of course, he doesn't see how it is.
Yeah, no, I think Pritzker's all right. He's a rich, pompous, he's probably a dick, but
I don't like him.
But I think he's all right. I think he actually does care about the state, which I feel is important.
I think no matter what, if someone is running for office, they care about the thing that they're running for.
No.
I think so.
No.
I just think that they have a completely different idea of like what is the right thing to do.
Well,
that's what I mean. They care. For the most part, the vast majority of people who run for office and get into office care about the representation and the people that they are representing. I think even Trump cares. I think he's also corrupt and does a lot of shit.
Well, he cares about like being rich.
Yeah, I think he cares about that, but I think he also cares about the direction of the country. I think he's wrong in a lot of the ways in which he wants to go about fixing it, but that doesn't mean I don't think he still cares. I don't think caring's the problem. I think it's what it is they're trying to do is the problem because
Okay,
fair.
That's fair.
I don't like a lot of the policies of Pritzker. Like,
what? He hasn't done much.
He's the one who passed the one thing of his that I was really happy about was him signing into. He enshrined an Illinois constitutional amendment protecting the right of access to an abortion.
Yeah.
So that's part of the Illinois Constitution now.
Yeah.
Which is good. That's maybe the only thing I think he's done good. I don't like the increase in the minimum wage. I think that does more harm than good. I don't like the overregulation and overtaxation of THC and cannabis. Like apparently what's considered high percentile THC is anything over 25%, at which it's taxed at a rate of like 40% or 42%.
Yeah, it's
which
a lot
is
of tax.
Insane.
It's a lot of tax.
And it's not like that tax is paid by the companies selling the weed. That tax is paid by the consumers buying it.
Yeah, I do, however,
also we have an insane property tax rates.
Weed is too potent.
I agree. I mean, I don't think. Look, guys, I'm not going to buy.
Stop smoking that high potent THC. It's messing up your brain.
THC ain't all. You got to look at all the cannabinoids and all that shit. But regardless, I still think if someone wants to buy something that has 30% THC, they shouldn't have to pay a 40% fucking tax on it. That's insane.
Yeah.
That's almost 150% what you would be paying.
Wasn't alcohol
otherwise.
tax like super high back in the day?
Yeah, for a while.
And wasn't that like how the government was funded? By alcohol sales.
No, there was an attempt right near the beginning of the country when there were some people who the government needed to generate revenue. The federal government needed to generate revenue, and so that they started putting a tax on whiskey, or a whiskey tax, and then there was a little bit of a rebellion against it, and the George Washington mobilized the militia to put down that rebellion.
The whiskey rebellion.
Yeah, the whiskey. I think that's what it's called. Actually, the whiskey rebellion. I think it was early 1790s, like right after the formation of the Constitution of the United States.
Interesting. So we're talking about Pritzker, but we're going back to the ballot measure for Chicago.
Yeah, let's go back to the ballot measure after that little tangent.
Oh yeah. So 94% of nearly 94% of properties sold in Chicago would see a reduction in taxes because they're valued at less than $1 million. As you had mentioned earlier, I felt that this in the future
some people would
change.
And also, well, there's that, but also before we went on that tangent, you were mentioning a concern of people getting together to devalue the neighborhoods in which they live so that their homes become less than the value of the 1 million or less than the 1.5 million to get out of a tax bracket that they otherwise would have been in.
Yeah, but this is regarding the buyer, not the seller. So I guess the buyer can't really influence, external properties of how a home is valued.
I think neighborhoods could get together and do things that would do that.
Yeah,
and there could be corruption between the buyer and the seller.
But that doesn't benefit the seller.
Unless the seller is going to then buy something somewhere else.
This has already got too complicated.
Yeah, but you got to think about the way these people are going to operate. They're going to try and they have the money to afford all the lawyers that will allow them to do this shit. These shenanigans.
This is the another interesting thing. Well, obviously the major critics of this ballot measure are all the real estate companies and agencies that deal with this market. Critics of the measure say that it would have a chilling impact on commercial property sales, as those owners are already feeling the impact of more businesses having employees work from home, reducing overhead costs and occupancy rates, blah, blah, blah.
So that's an interesting... Wait, hang on. That's an interesting thing, because they're talking about commercial stuff.
Let me give you one last stat. Right. According to Crane's Chicago Business, commercial property transactions in Chicago totaled approximately $5.3 billion in the first half of 2023, a 51% reduction from the previous year.
Yeah, I know. I remember seeing that Andrew Callahan piece about San Francisco streets and talking about how these office buildings and corporate buildings that were built to house the staff of these tech industries have been gutted because of the move to remote work. And so you have a disincentive to buy these buildings because there's low occupancy in those buildings, and so it's not really a great return on your investment. Would this increase in the tax further disincentivize the transfer of these buildings, which again would be a little bit problematic because a lot of these buildings are held by large bank conglomerates as investment holdings of where they put their money, where they invest their money that their clients put into their banks. Because the idea of banks is you put your money in, they keep 10% of your money and then take the 90% and
try to make more money
with it. And one of the things that might cause a potential bank failure in the future is the ability to not make a return on your investment on these large corporate buildings, especially given that they have low occupancy rates now.
Yeah, there's also a new idea of reutilizing these office corporate buildings for just living space.
Yeah, remodeling them. But again, that's a large a large investment to make on these buildings. You're going to have to essentially change the layout of every floor.
Someone with a lot of money has to come in and take this up, because you have to commit yourself to this ginormous building for the next several decades.
Exactly. So you're going to need to commit to the investment of refurbishing the building. Yeah. You're going to need a bit of a guarantee that you will be able to sell the units that you refurbish to population.
Which I think would be pretty reasonable in big cities.
I think so too. I think it's possible in big cities, and it's especially possible if you make it smaller units with that are targeted for people with low income. So cheap units for low income people.
Not in downtown, baby.
I mean, I don't think it's probable, but it would be. But the thing is,
they'll have certain units in New York. You have special designated 5 or 6 apartment buildings that are low income housing.
Yeah, but I'm also interested. How is this tax rate going to change that incentive? because then they have to add that increase of the 400% tax rate. If you're gonna buy a office building downtown, it's gonna cost more than $1.5 million.
Yeah. Oh, those are hundreds of millions.
I know.
Of dollars.
So you're spending hundreds of millions of dollars, and you have a tax increase of 400% already on top of that. You're gonna be okay. Let's just do the quick math here. Say you're selling a building for 200. You're buying a building for 200 million.
Yeah, like 30 stories.
So
20
it doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter.
You're buying it for 200 million. All right. Hang on.
You have to divide that by 100. Wait. Yeah, you have to divide it.
15 of 500 is 3%.
Okay.
So 200 million times 3%, you would be paying $6.6 million in taxes.
That's not a lot. To someone that has several hundred million, that's not a lot.
No,
it is
someone has several hundred million. You're paying for the building. You're paying 200 million for the building, and then you have to pay 6 million of taxes on top of that, and just the transfer tax.
Yeah.
And you have to think about the
taxes.
Property taxes, and you have to think about if you want to turn it into housing, the amount of investment that turning that building into housing would be. So you're talking about 206, property tax. Let's hypothetically say another 4 million, although I'm sure it's more than that. So 210 million plus probably a 50 million, if not more, investment on reconverting it into housing, if not more. You're talking about a $260 million.
Let's say renovations is 100 million.
Let's say renovations are 100 million. So you're talking about a $310 million investment that you need to see a greater than $310 million return on.
Holy shit. That's a lot of dough.
I need to read some more economic books.
But honestly, now thinking about it, the way these things are financed, it's never like, a lot of the big places do like pay for it, but like a lot of the things are financed.
Yeah, I know.
Like everything's just like keep the money moving,
well, and
like,
especially
we'll push it down the line.
Well, let's think about that. It's financed.
Yep.
What's the interest rate right now from the Fed?
A lot.
It's a lot. It's very high. So that is that's gonna slow the sale and financing of these buildings. I think it's like somewhere between 5% and 6% right now. And 4 years ago it was 0.5%?
It was almost nothing.
Yeah.
This week 5.5.
5.5. So it's gone up by 5% in the last 2-3 years.
Quantitative easing, everyone.
Quantitative easing is just a fucking fancy word to say printing more money.
Yep, there we go. Wow.
Yeah, you just need to be plugged in and plugged out. All right, resuming. We talked about the Supreme Court. We talked about France. We talked about a little bit about the Jews and Gaza. And we talked a little bit about Ukraine. We talked about the Chicago tax. I want to talk about something not politics related.
Oh, yeah. But before we get to that, we'll end on that story, the not politics related. I wanted to talk about one more thing. New York City, baby.
Oh, right. The militarization of the subways.
I suppose we can call it that, yeah.
I mean, that's pretty much what they're sending the National Guard, which is a branch of the military.
So, yeah, they're going to send 1,000 personnel.
75% of which are National Guardsmen.
Yeah, and then the other people are like police and stuff, state police.
Yeah, police and other things like that.
They're going to be going to the subway. The governor of New York was very staunch in announcing this plan and saying that she wants New Yorkers to feel safe.
I think it's kind of like a Democratic counter to the Republican critique of crime-ridden cities, crime-ridden Democrat-run cities.
I know.
No, sorry, is that how they put it? Crime-ridden liberal cities.
I know. Which is crazy. Because I feel like a lot of those grievances that the far right has against cities are usually aimed at the West Coast cities.
West and East. The coastal cities.
The coastal cities. Yeah, but I think...
The coastal cities and Chicago.
No, I think Chicago and New York are treated differently. Of course, they're also tied in like the it's a nasty city, sludge. But like, I feel like New York and Chicago are specifically their own things, and then the West Coast cities are just the West Coast liberals.
Yeah, the West Coast, the coastal elite are the
Yeah.
West Coast liberals, and then you have the New Englanders, which, like, you know, the cities like New York and Baltimore and Boston, Philadelphia.
Baltimore.
Baltimore's a shit show.
It's a shit show.
What I've heard.
Anyway.
but then you know, then you've got Chicago, and in its own way, Detroit are treated differently than all of that, and even differently to each other. But still, there's a difference in the way that the Midwest cities are treated versus the Northeast cities versus the West Coast cities.
You know, the far right never talks about Miami.
Yeah, right.
They never fucking talk about Miami.
Well, that's because they've got a Republican governor, so it's not a liberal city.
It is a liberal city.
I mean, it's
Dade
not.
County,
But the
Miami-Dade County is.
The thing is, though, I mean, I'm pretty sure the mayor of Miami is a Republican.
Really?
I believe so.
Interesting.
And that's why I think is, again, they don't talk about Miami because Miami doesn't fall into their narrative of crime-ridden liberal cities.
It's
They ignore that, you know, it's cherry picking the data. They ignore the ones that don't confirm to their beliefs, and then they
wouldn't like Miami anyway. It's just full of Latinos and strip clubs. You could go clubbing at like 9 a.m.
that's in wow.
Yeah, I want to go. I've never been to Miami.
Pretty slutty.
It is pretty slutty.
I think I have family who live in Miami, actually.
We can go
One
to
of the
Miami.
weirdest uncles I've ever met in my life.
Oh, never mind. I don't want to go meet your uncle.
No, don't. All right. So here's the thing. All right. Long story short is a super little quick tangent about Miami and my Miami uncle. So this uncle of mine, he shall remain unnamed. I'm like 15. My older brother is with us. It's the first time my older brother is meeting his uncle.
Okay.
And we're out at dinner, and I'm sitting. My uncle's to my right, and his wife is to my left.
Okay.
My brothers are across the table from me. We are in a public space at dinner.
Why are you seated like that? Why are you in the middle?
I
between
don't
them?
know. I don't fucking know.
That's such a weird,
What-
anyway.
Hang on. It gets weirder because, all right, he hands me his iPod because, you know, this is,
Yeah.
fuck, I don't know,
While ago.
15, 16 years ago.
Yeah.
So he hands me his iPod and he goes, hey, go to look at the photos. It's some beautiful artwork. And so I'm like, okay, that's a strange thing to say. So I open the photos and it is a bunch of porn.
What the fuck?
Like, just, you know, photos of naked women. And the thing is like, you know, porn actresses, or porn models, they're gonna be younger women. This fucking guy has 3 daughters.
Ew.
And they're older than me by, like, you know, 6 to 10 years, if not a little bit more. So when I'm looking at these photos at the age of 15, I'm looking at photos of women who are around the same age as his daughters.
Oh.
And again, I'm sitting in between him and his wife in a public space at dinner. And I was just like, what the fuck? Thinking to myself, like, what the fuck is this? And I just hand it back to him like, okay, that was a little uncomfortable. He then proceeds to hand it to my older brother, whom he is meeting for the very first time, across the table while he is sitting next to my mother and maybe my grandfather and my younger brother. And I see, I'm watching my older brother as he opens this up, and then he looks at it, and then he looks right up at me with the most puzzled look on his face, like, what the fuck is this?
Yeah.
And I looked at him like, dude, I don't know what the fuck this is. This is weird as shit.
Yeah.
I don't think I've talked to that uncle since.
Yeah, I wouldn't either.
I also am pretty sure that uncle's now divorced.
Yeah, I would divorce him too.
I would divorce him too, yeah. Very fucking strange, man.
That's a active, compliant withdrawal or acceptance of his debauchery. He has come to this
It was
state.
voyeurism for sure, because I
Yeah.
mean, he was doing it in public.
So he's always like looked at naked ladies, and like as he got older, he's like, oh, this is okay with me. This is good for me.
This is
all right."
what the little boys need to see.
It's debauchery, and you keep amplifying it, and that's how you like lose yourself.
Yeah, and I think he was probably trying to feel as though he could relate to us because he was in a
He's like,
house. He was and also he was in a house of, he had no sons. He only had daughters and his wife. So he was not in a house with other boys. And so I think he felt like, oh, I can be like this man's man around these boys that are my nephews.
Which is weird.
Yeah, very weird, especially since he had never met my older brother before that day.
Dang. Okay, back to New York. What the fuck? We like went completely different.
Yeah, because we talked about crime in liberal cities versus Republican cities.
Versus Miami.
And then we got to Miami, and then tangents.
So yeah, which was I thought it was interesting that the governor of New York was specifically staunchly supporting New York City, because I don't think many governors, really care for their biggest city. Of course, they have to, but like the way
they have to because the biggest city's got to be like the biggest economic driver of the state.
Yeah, but the way she said it just sounded like she was like the ruler of New York City.
Yeah, a little bit.
Yeah,
right? Like it feels like. Well, I mean, I don't know. That's an interesting thing. I don't know. Did you look into this at all? Did the mayor of New York City request this from the governor, or was this something that the governor independently made as a decision?
Actually, I don't know. I really don't.
Because I didn't hear anything about the mayor requesting this.
Yeah.
But, given who the mayor is,
he's
a
happy.
Former cop, I'm sure he's happy with this, and I wouldn't be surprised if he had requested it.
Yeah, so I can speak from experience. I lived in New York City for half a year. I felt safe. I felt good. At first, I was a bit nervous, but that's just because of preconditioned notions and information that I have been given that weren't true. And plus, I went out there just solo, by myself, no family there. I was completely by myself there, new job, new world. So I was a little apprehensive, but I lived in Manhattan. I took the subway system. It was fine. I think in my 6-month stay, I had one incident in which some rowdy individual got in my personal space, and that was only because he was bothering a girl on the train, and then the girl was like, "Oh, I'll sit next to me, so I can help her with this weirdo," and the weirdo is just he didn't say anything as soon as she got next to me. And I just kept looking at him. I'm like, what are you doing?
I don't know. I mean, I feel like shit like that happens in any city.
Happens in any city, but I'm just stating my experience. I thought that the subway system in New York was so fucking dope. I loved it. I didn't need a car. I felt like I'm actively going on missions every single day. For real,
going, making the wrong turns pretty often.
Oh yeah, I would get lost. I would take the train the wrong way home, and then I'd be distracted on my phone or just listening to music, and then I'm looking out the window, I'm this doesn't look familiar, and then I'm 40 minutes away in Brooklyn where I'm supposed to be headed uptown. So that happened 3 times to me. I got lost on the subway system. Anyway, 1,000 new police are gonna be patrolling the subway systems.
Have started, actually. I think they already started.
Oh, okay. Well, it's interesting. But folks, if you haven't been to the New York subway system, it's immense. It's uniquely American. Of course, it's the only system at that scale in the nation, but also just granted, I haven't been outside the nation to other large metro cities like Tokyo or Paris or London, so I don't know how their metro system compares to New York's, but I can compare New York's to Chicago, and Chicago is small time compared to New York.
Actually, I think I took the metro system in Paris when I was there.
Was it nice? Just felt normal.
Felt normal. Felt like any other metro system.
Yeah.
The major train stations, the train station going from one city to a next, that was dirty as shit with a bunch of homeless people outside. The moment I walked outside and lit a cigarette, I got 3 people coming up to me asking me for cigarettes, which,
oh shit,
I've experienced here in Chicago before, but not to that
they bum rushed you.
The bums rushed me.
They did. Literal bums rushed you.
I had a literal bum rush.
So New York is doing this, and I honestly don't.
Okay, I'll be honest. Hang on, I gotta say something real quick. When you start talking like to the people listening, and you start saying "folks," my eyes glaze over, and I'm not paying attention anymore.
Why?
Because you're not talking to me. You're talking to them. Talk to me.
Oh, well, I don't have to talk to you all the time, dude.
it just feels weird because we're the only two in this room that when you start talking to the people, just tell me, and then if they find it relevant, they can. Yeah, okay. That's right, people. I don't fucking care about you.
Okay, I don't know how to feel about your comments right now, honestly.
I'm just joking around. Okay, enough.
Wait. I still have some ideas. So I think it's all right. I know there's a lot of like.
Oh, I don't like it.
Yeah, you don't like it.
No, I don't like it at all.
Okay,
I think it's the militarization of a civilian place.
It is.
It's just making the whole militarization of the police even worse.
Yeah,
because it's literally adding the military to policing. It's not just militarizing the police; it's adding the military to policing.
Yeah. But it's hard for people to grasp just how large the city is, and I feel like this. But
hang on. Also, at the same time, they're doing this. They're really pushing hard to not allow city residents to get concealed carry permits so that they can defend themselves if attacked.
I don't know the policy that New York is doing that.
So they had a thing, and I think it was overturned by the Supreme Court a year or two ago. But essentially, they had a thing where if you wanted to get a concealed carry permit in the state of New York, you had to prove to the police that you had a specific need for this as a defensive measure, which was a violation of the Constitution.
Oh.
And then the city, like in a lot of these cities, including in Chicago, there is a really hard push to prevent your average citizen from getting the means by which they must defend themselves, making the citizen reliant on the police to defend them.
Yeah.
And the police are historically really bad at defending people.
Yeah.
Look at Uvalde.
That was so bad. Recently, there was like some news out of there that the police acted within their protocols or whatever. So like no one's like nothing's happening.
There is no, like, the Supreme Court ruled years and years ago that the police are not obliged to intervene in a violent act. It is not a responsibility of theirs. They're not obliged to. It's not part of their job description. They don't have to intervene. So really the only people who have the imperative to intervene on your behalf is yourself.
That's true. All true.
And New York is, I think, going the route of trying to make the people more dependent on the police, which will, I think, cause more people to get harmed.
New Yorkers work differently, dude. I don't think you can like make that general statement of New Yorkers. But
what general statement of New Yorkers was I making?
That they will be more reliant on the police.
No, I don't think that they will. I think that the government is trying to make them more reliant on the police by preventing them from arming themselves and introducing all of this militarized police. I don't think it's a matter of what the New Yorkers are doing. I think it's a matter of what the New York government is doing to the New Yorkers.
Which I think the New Yorkers will probably not be influenced much by it.
So you think New Yorkers are not going to care about the police being down there, and then they're also going to just keep carrying guns even if they're not legally allowed to?
Yeah. It's New York, man. It's fucking New York.
Honestly, I think you have a bit of an idealized vision of how different New York is as a culture.
It's not an idealized. New York is its own culture.
Every city is its own culture. I'm still talking about the aspect of government intervening in what a citizen should be able to do. Like, every city has its own unique culture. That's not what's that question here. I think you do idolize what degree in which how unique New York is. I don't think it is as unique as you think it is. Unique New York, unique. You need unique New York.
We can break that down into metrics and like things we want to talk about, but right now, I don't care.
Okay, then let's stop talking about New York because I don't care anymore. I want to talk about Illinois, where the state we're actually in. This year, is the 17-year brood of cicadas. So they estimate in late May, early June, millions of cicadas are going to emerge from the ground. Something like in a forested area in Chicago, it was estimated last time this happened, or no, it was estimated in 1956 from a study that was done then. During that
was wild.
I know, it was like 70 years ago.
That was before the pesticides, bro.
Okay, it's not like we're fucking spraying pesticides in our forests.
It doesn't matter. It's everywhere. Anyway, go on.
That's not. No.
It is.
No, it's not. Not in that degree. Not in the way you're thinking it. But regardless, something like 1.3 million cicadas emerged per acre in a forested land then. There was even a story of in 1990, so 2 broods ago, in 1990, of people having to use their snow shovels in the summer to shovel all the dead cicadas off the ground.
Yeah. And
they explained it's going to be like a chorus. It's going to be a constant buzz in the air while they're, doing their, hey, lady, you want to fuck noise. Which is essentially what that noise is. It's all those cicadas going like, hey, who's down to fuck? Yeah. And, let's make babies. And then 17 years later, those babies will be, hey, who wants to fuck? And it's different than the like annual cicadas. Because, every year we have cicadas in like the late summer. In fact, actually, speaking of this, my friend was telling me he was working on a show. He works in the film industry, and he was working on a show. Yeah. And there was a director from California there, and they're working in August, and the cicadas are going, and the director has to pause the shot they're doing, and he's like, "What the hell is that noise?" And then all of the local Chicagoans were like, "Those are cicadas." And he's like, "I thought those were only 17 years, every 17 years." And all of the Chicagoans are like, "Yeah, some of them." But there are them that exist every year. This is just a fact of living in the Midwest.
Wait. In California, they don't have them?
Not really, no.
Oh.
I mean, there are perhaps some in some areas of California, but in the LA area, no. It's, pretty...
It's dry.
It's dry, desert, not really much forest. And, you need, like, wet dirt and cicadas. Because the cicadas they grow underground for 17 years.
Yeah.
And then once they're ready, they dig their way out of the ground, climb up trees, hatch, and go flying up into the trees, and then start going, hey, pretty lady.
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm excited for it. The last time I thought it was fun and interesting. My mom was a biology teacher, so when they were falling off the trees and whatnot, we'd go collect them. Actually, I'm pretty sure I probably have some collected from back then. Also, I'm sure you could eat them, too.
Yeah.
Ooh, I wonder what a caramelized cicada would taste like.
In Ecuador, we eat beetles.
Yeah. I mean, insects are a good source of protein.
Yeah. You just fry them up.
Yeah.
Yep. That's how we do it in Ecuador.
And I mean, like, the cicadas are going to die anyway. They only live for a few weeks.
Just fry them up.
This is a bit of a...
Would insects make good?
Maybe I'm not trying to be insulting with what I'm about to say, but, what if we start collecting all these cicadas from this brood and using them to feed
animals.
The homeless?
Oh.
I mean, animals too, sure, but that's probably more humane.
What the fuck? We went completely different routes.
Yeah, we did. I remember I talked about this with like, so not far from where we're recording right now is North Park Nature Center in North Park Village, which is a little like enclosed community area where you can get apartments. There's senior living there. There's Peterson Park, which is over there as well, and the North Park Nature Center.
Yeah.
Now, that whole area has... I mean, okay, I don't know what the population is today, but something like 8 years ago when I was talking to them there, they were talking about how they had a population of deer in around 40 to 42 individual deer.
Okay.
That space they have can only sustain, without having environmental damage, 2 to 3 deer. So I had an idea. Okay, why don't we cull the deer and then donate the carcasses to food banks in the city to feed venison to the homeless or the food insecure?
Yeah.
And I mentioned that to someone, and I remember a person at the time was like, "Oh my God, that's horrible! Like, you don't know what's in that." I'm like, "I'm sure it's better than McDonald's."
It's just meat.
Yeah, it's just meat. Like, and plus, you know, I mean, sure, it's tough and very gamey meat, so you just grind it up and mix it in with some pork to get some fat in there.
Make it some freaking ground beef.
Ground
deer.
But the thing is, I looked into it, and it is illegal to hunt deer in Cook County. So you can't call those deer. Like the nature.
What about the state?
No,
like the state can like, you know, say like, hey, there's too many deer here.
Even that they were having problems with, because again, it was a county rule that was preventing them from calling the deer. Like, I remember asking them at the time at the nature center, like, why don't you guys call the deer and whatnot? And they were saying, we can't because Cook County does not allow for the killing of deer in Cook County.
Interesting.
Or at least on Cook County owned property.
Cook County has a great forest preserve system.
We do, yeah.
It's really nice.
You know, I haven't been to in a while, and I'm going to make sure to go when the cicadas are coming out. LaBaugh Woods over there on Foster.
Cumberland? Yeah.
No, not Cumberland. That's way far out there. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about LaBaugh Woods, which is over on Foster.
Oh, the one that goes north.
Yeah, the one that's right at the beginning of the North Branch.
We're near
of the, yeah, it's you know, it's
yeah.
next to, it's part of Gompers Park, or just next to Gompers Park.
Yeah. Yep.
Samuel Gompers.
Oh.
I think he was a union organizer back in the 1920s. All right, so cicadas, everybody. Those are going to be in May. Oh, and coming up in just under a month is the solar eclipse, and this will be the last time that totality of a solar eclipse will be visible in the United States, or at least contiguous United States, until 2044. So not for another 20 years will it be visible here.
Yeah, so I'm definitely going. I still have to decide whether to go to Indiana or Southern Illinois.
Yeah, and also I think technically the closest place to where we are right now, where it's going to be passing through in, is going to be Toledo, Ohio.
There's nothing to fucking do over there.
Well, also, like, my concern is that, you know, this is April. So, it's, you know, April showers bring May flowers. It's going to be cloudy and rainy in this part of the country. And so I'm worried about it being cloud covered during the time of year.
Yeah.
And so that's why I'm considering going to Texas for it.
Yeah. I was thinking to maybe go to New York just to hang out in the city and then go watch.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it's not going to be going through New York City.
Yeah, I know. But, like, I have to go into the upstate. I'll just go to Southern Illinois.
I was going to say, it'll be cold up there.
I'll just go to Southern Illinois or Indiana.
You're right. It's passing through Indianapolis.
Yeah. Actually, interesting little region that I guess not a lot of people may know about. Southwest Indiana. It's pretty cool. There's a lot of, like, historical little towns there.
Oh, you mean like on the border with Illinois?
Just the general area of Southwest Indiana.
Yeah. Not
just the border region.
But that's like, you know, like close to, what would that be? Close to Kentucky and Southern Illinois, right?
Yeah.
There's right on the border of those three states, there's a national, I think it's a national park called Land Between the Lakes.
Oh.
And they've got like a buffalo preserve there, and that's where I went for the first for the eclipse back in 2017.
Oh, do you recommend?
It's a pretty area, yeah. You know, it's a matter of like if you want to camp or rent something, I'm sure at this point it's going to be either impossible to find a place or it's going to be expensive.
Yeah.
Part of me is thinking like if I go to Southern Illinois, I'm just going to drive down there and then like drive down there on the 7th, sleep in my car, find a spot to view the eclipse, either sleep in my car again or head back up to Chicago after the eclipse.
Yeah.
It's either that or I'm going to fly down to Texas and either go to Austin, fly down to Austin, stay in Austin, or go to Dallas or go to Houston, because all three of those cities are going to be in the path of totality.
I mean, you have to decide that pretty quick.
I know. I'm gonna be making that decision tomorrow.
All right. Cool.
Hang on. I'm gonna let you do the outro while I run and take a piss.
Okay. Well, I guess Monty left. You could have just waited 2 seconds.
I'll be back.
Well, it's over. He left. He had to go pee. Yeah. Anything in my thoughts right now? No. New York has also robot police. Very militarized place. But I don't know, man. Like I know Monty's a very staunch, private citizenry, private rights, private, just leave me alone, type of deal. But New York, that's just a package that comes with New York. You're not ever really alone, especially in Manhattan. Like, you're always around some people, someone. So I don't know how this will affect the psyche of New Yorkers having just the military there. Because all the police that are in the subway systems, all of the locals make fun of them. Everyone makes fun of the police there. Actually, I remember one time, like when I first moved there, I was getting lost, obviously, and there was a group of police officers just chilling at this transfer like hallway. I think one of the big stations. Anyway, I'm lost, so I go up to the group of cops, and like they were like, I don't know, like uneasy that I came up to them, and then that made me uneasy. But all I wanted was some directions, and they gave me the directions. But it was like a tense greeting, and maybe I was tense initially, and that made them tense, which in turn made me more tense. But yeah, I feel like there's a culture of like, sort of like, just making fun of the police over there, which I think is a broader American culture now. But I don't know, it's playful. I don't know, it's not that serious is what I'm trying to say. Most people will, want help from police if they ever need it. But yeah, just talking about certain aspects of New York, I guess culture. One of the funniest things is the undercover cops in New York. They look so fucking cartoony. 'Cause they're supposed to be undercover, but they're always like in the group of like 2 or 3. I don't know where they get their fashion sense. I know New York is supposed to be this like fashion mecca, and like you can wear whatever you want, but even in the undercover police officers that roam the subway, like you can tell right away that they're cops. Mostly just like they have like that cop build, like kind of like looking like buff, but like just big at the same time. You know what I'm talking about? And they also have like, they like to wear boots or like Air Force Ones, and it's really, really funny because like you immediately know when you see an undercover cop in New York. But Monty's back, and now we could actually...
You were just giving me shit about how we were almost done, and then I come back in and after going to the bathroom down the hall, and you're still talking.
Well, I wanted to say a proper bye, and not just you fucking off, and then just ending it there.
I don't know. I like the kind of fucking off and ending it there. I wanted to give this episode a bit of an Irish goodbye.
Well, now we can have a proper goodbye.
Okay.
But yeah,
people, go see the eclipse. Get ready for your ears to be filled with the mating calls of millions of cicadas.
Yeah, that'd be wonderful. We can I can go record some, and then we can...
You know what, we should do a podcast outside, and then it'll just be...
Yeah, we'll go to the forest preserve.
Yeah, we'll take shrooms and go to the forest preserve and do a walking podcast.
Oh gosh, I wonder how that would hit me. But anyway, we're ending it here, folks. Thank you so much for listening, and have a good weekend.
Don't forget to vote in your primaries.
Yeah, go vote. Bye.
Or don't. Bye.